Hey guys, it's Karenology. This one is pure chaos. You have to hear how it all went down.
I had always been proud of my home. Nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, it offered the privacy and tranquility I'd craved for years. My driveway gate, installed shortly after I moved in, symbolized my independence and hard-earned success. That was until the homeowner association decided to make it their business. The day started like any other. I returned from a 3-day business trip only to find my driveway gate missing. At first I thought it had been stolen. The gaping emptiness where the gate once stood felt like a personal violation. It wasn't until I found a bright red notice pinned to my garage door that the truth came crashing down. Your driveway gate has been removed due to non-compliance with recently amended homeowner association regulations. Reinstallation or any modification to the property must be approved by the board. The letter ended with a threat. Any attempt to restore the gate without homeowner association approval would result in fines of up to $5. My heart raced as I clutched the notice. I hadn't been informed of any rule changes, let alone voted on them. Storming into my house, I dug through old emails and letters from the homeowner association. Nothing mentioned gates or amendments. They had acted behind my back. Determined to get answers, I headed to the homeowner association office. It was a sleek, impersonal building that screamed bureaucracy. The receptionist, a young woman with a tight smile, directed me to the conference room, where the board was conveniently holding a meeting. As I entered, all eyes turned to me. Karen, the head of the board and my persistent nemesis, sat at the center of the long table. Her sharp features and condescending smirk only fueled my anger. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice dripping with feigned politeness, "what brings you here?" "My driveway gate," I snapped. "Why was it removed without my knowledge?" Karen's smirk widened. "The board voted on new guidelines last month. Gates are no longer permitted unless they meet specific aesthetic standards." "I wasn't informed about this vote," I shot back. "Not everyone can keep up with community communications," she replied, her tone implying I was at fault. "The decision was posted on our online portal." "You're telling me you tore down my property based on a rule I never agreed to?" I said, my voice rising. "This is theft." The room grew tense. Karen leaned forward, her smile vanishing. "It's enforcement, Mr. Reed. If you have an issue, take it up with the compliance committee." Her dismissal hit a nerve. "You're going to regret this," I said, glaring at her and the rest of the board. That evening, I called for a neighborhood meeting. Despite Karen's influence, several neighbors shared my frustration with the homeowner association's overreach. As the group gathered in my living room, it became clear that my gate was just the tip of the iceberg. "They fined me for having solar panels that were too reflective," one neighbor said, shaking his head. "They've been harassing us about our garden. Apparently it's not aligned with community aesthetics," another chimed in. "This is Karen's doing," a third added. "She's using the homeowner association to impose her personal preferences on everyone." We spent hours brainstorming ways to fight back, but Karen had the upper hand. The homeowner association's rules were convoluted, and its leadership was entrenched. Frustration filled the room as the meeting ended without a clear plan. A week later, things escalated. Early one morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. Rushing outside, I saw construction crews digging into my front yard. Furious, I demanded an explanation. The foreman handed me a document, claiming the homeowner association had approved a drainage project that required access through my property. The document bore my signature, or rather, a forged version of it. Rage coursed through me as I confronted Karen at her home. "You forged my signature," I accused, holding up the paper. "Don't be ridiculous," she said, her voice laced with contempt. "The board approved the project. You should be grateful we're improving the neighborhood." By destroying my property, I shot back. "This isn't over." As I walked away, I noticed a security camera perched on Karen's porch, its lens following me. It wasn't paranoia. She was watching my every move. Determined to fight back, I began gathering evidence. Late nights were spent poring over homeowner association documents, looking for inconsistencies. It wasn't long before I found something shocking. Financial records revealing that Karen and other board members were funneling homeowner association funds into personal accounts. With this information, I knew I had a chance to expose them. But the closer I got to the truth, the more I realized Karen wasn't going down without a fight. Part 1 ends with the police showing up at my door. Karen had filed a complaint, accusing me of disruptive behavior and threatening homeowner association members. As the officers demanded an explanation, I realized this battle was about to get a lot more complicated. The police visit marked a turning point. Standing in my doorway, flanked by two stern-faced officers, I realized Karen had escalated the situation beyond neighborhood disputes. Her complaint alleged that I had made threats of violence against homeowner association members, an outright fabrication meant to discredit me. Despite my protests, the officers insisted on entering my home to ensure there was no imminent danger. I complied, determined to keep my composure. As they searched my house, I explained the situation, the unauthorized removal of my gate, the forged documents, and the financial irregularities I had uncovered. Though they listened, it was clear they were more focused on fulfilling their obligation to respond to Karen's accusations than addressing my grievances. "We'll file a report," one of them finally said. "But unless you have evidence of a crime, there's not much we can do about homeowner association disputes." I watched them leave, frustration simmering beneath my calm exterior. Karen's manipulations were more insidious than I'd anticipated. It wasn't just about control. She was weaponizing the system to isolate and silence me. But instead of discouraging me, it steeled my resolve. That night, I began documenting everything. Every email, letter, and photograph went into a growing file of evidence. I reached out to neighbors who had expressed dissatisfaction with the homeowner association, urging them to share their own experiences. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Karen and her allies on the board had been abusing their positions for years. Selective enforcement of rules, unexplained fines, and even property devaluations were all part of their arsenal. My investigation took a dramatic turn when a former homeowner association treasurer, Ellen, agreed to meet with me. She had resigned months earlier under suspicious circumstances, and her insights proved invaluable. Over coffee at a local diner, she revealed how Karen had coerced board members into compliance through intimidation and manipulation. She'd threatened to ostracize anyone who disagreed with her, Ellen explained. And if that didn't work, she'd dig into their personal lives. She's ruthless. Ellen also confirmed my suspicions about the financial misconduct. "There's a slush fund," she admitted. "Karen and her inner circle use it for personal expenses. I've seen the records, but I couldn't do anything without risking my safety." Armed with Ellen's testimony, I decided to confront the homeowner association at their next meeting. The gathering was held in the community center, a sterile room that felt more like a courtroom under Karen's reign. As I entered, she greeted me with her trademark smirk, clearly relishing the opportunity to humiliate me publicly. The meeting began with routine agenda items, but when the floor opened for member concerns, I stood up. "I'd like to address the board regarding recent actions taken against my property," I announced. Karen's expression hardened. "This is not the time for personal grievances, Mr. Reed. Please submit your concerns in writing." "I've already done that," I countered, holding up a stack of papers. "But since the board has chosen to ignore my letters, I'm here to ensure my voice is heard." The room fell silent as I laid out my case. I detailed the unauthorized removal of my gate, the forged signature on the drainage project approval, and the financial discrepancies I'd uncovered. I presented copies of documents and photographs, as well as Ellen's signed statement. By the time I finished, murmurs rippled through the audience. Karen tried to regain control. "These accusations are baseless," she declared. "Mr. Reed has a history of disruptive behavior and is clearly seeking to undermine the board for his own gain." "If that's true," and I shot back, "why don't we let the community decide? I propose an independent audit of homeowner association finances and a vote of no confidence in the current board." The room erupted in chaos. Some residents cheered, while others shouted objections. Karen banged her gavel, demanding order, but the momentum had shifted. For the first time, she looked genuinely rattled. The meeting ended without resolution, but it was clear the tide was turning. Over the next few days, I organized a petition calling for the audit and vote. Support poured in, bolstered by neighbors who had endured years of Karen's tyranny. As signatures grew, so did Karen's desperation. One evening, I returned home to find my car keyed and my mailbox smashed. It was a clear message, but I refused to be intimidated. I installed security cameras and shared the footage with the police, adding it to my growing case against the homeowner association. Meanwhile, Ellen and I worked tirelessly to prepare for the audit, knowing it could be our best chance to expose Karen's corruption. The pressure culminated in a tense standoff at the next homeowner association meeting. With the petition submitted and the audit underway, Karen's grip on power was slipping. She resorted to more aggressive tactics, accusing me of harassment and even hinting at legal action. But as the evidence mounted, her allies began to distance themselves, unwilling to go down with her. The final blow came when the audit results were revealed. The independent firm confirmed widespread financial misconduct, implicating Karen and several board members. The community erupted in outrage, demanding their immediate resignation. As Karen's empire crumbled, I felt a surge of vindication. But the fight wasn't over. Rebuilding trust and accountability in the homeowner association would take time, and I was determined to see it through. With Karen's resignation and the corrupt board dismantled, the atmosphere in the neighborhood felt lighter, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. However, I knew that the work was far from over. The damage caused by years of Karen's reign and the mismanagement of the homeowner association required not just cleanup, but also a fundamental restructuring. The newly elected board, made up of neighbors who had supported the call for change, invited me to take on a formal advisory role. Although hesitant, I accepted, driven by the desire to prevent the homeowner association from ever again becoming a tool for personal gain. My first recommendation was to implement stricter transparency measures, including open financial records and regular town hall meetings to ensure accountability. But just as we began rebuilding trust, remnants of the old regime struck back. Karen's loyalists, though diminished in number, still held significant sway over a small but vocal group of residents. They spread rumors that the new board was inexperienced and that I was using the homeowner association for personal vendettas. The whispers grew louder when the audit revealed just how deeply Karen's corruption had drained the association's funds. One evening, during a routine review of the homeowner association's records, I stumbled upon something alarming. Buried deep in a folder labeled miscellaneous expenses were invoices for services that had never been rendered. One name kept appearing: Greystone Contracting. The amounts were exorbitant, suggesting a kickback scheme that extended beyond the homeowner association's leadership. I brought the findings to the board. "This isn't just about Karen," I said. "Greystone Contracting is tied to every major project the homeowner association has approved in the last 5 years. If we dig deeper, we might find more connections." "You're suggesting we investigate the contractors?" one board member asked. "Absolutely. If Greystone is complicit, we're not just dealing with internal corruption. This could be a case of fraud involving external parties." The board agreed to hire a forensic accountant to examine all transactions involving Greystone Contracting. Meanwhile, I decided to approach the company directly, hoping to uncover information that might explain their pervasive presence in homeowner association dealings. The office of Greystone Contracting was unassuming, a modest building tucked away in an industrial park. When I arrived, I was met with a frosty reception. The receptionist's nervous demeanor and her reluctance to answer questions raised my suspicions. After a brief exchange, she handed me a business card and suggested I schedule an appointment with the company's legal representative. "This is bigger than I thought," I told Ellen later that evening. We had grown close through our shared battle against the homeowner association, and she had become my sounding board. Greystone's reaction wasn't just defensive. "They're hiding something." Ellen nodded thoughtfully. "If they're involved, they won't go down without a fight. You need to be careful." Her warning proved prescient. The next morning I woke to find my car vandalized again, with the words "Stop Digging" spray painted across the hood. The message was clear, but instead of fear, it ignited a deeper resolve. I reported the incident to the police and doubled down on my investigation. As the forensic accountant's report neared completion, the tension in the neighborhood grew palpable. Supporters of the old regime grew increasingly hostile, staging protests during board meetings and accusing the new leadership of political witch hunts. Karen herself reappeared, giving a carefully crafted statement to the local newspaper claiming she had been wrongfully vilified and forced to resign under duress. But the tide turned irreversibly when the accountant's findings were unveiled. Not only had Greystone overcharged the homeowner association by hundreds of thousands of dollars, but there was also evidence that Karen and her allies had received direct payments from the company. The findings implicated several other former board members, as well as key executives at Greystone. The community's reaction was explosive. Residents who had once defended Karen now turned on her, demanding justice. The homeowner association filed a lawsuit against Greystone, Karen, and the implicated board members. The media picked up the story, turning it into a local scandal. Karen's smug facade crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny, and she disappeared from the neighborhood, leaving her house up for sale. Despite the victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still unanswered questions. One name in the accountant's report stood out, a lawyer who had facilitated many of the questionable transactions. Their connections extended far beyond the homeowner association, suggesting that our neighborhood was just one small piece of a larger network of corruption. "You've done enough," Ellen urged when I shared my concerns. "You exposed Karen and helped clean up the homeowner association. Maybe it's time to let it go." But I couldn't. The battle with the homeowner association had revealed something in me, a relentless drive to uncover the truth and hold people accountable. This wasn't just about my driveway gate anymore. It was about ensuring that no one else would have to endure the same abuse of power. As I stood on my front porch that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in months, I believed we were on the right side of history. The revelations from the forensic audit had rocked the neighborhood, but the fallout was far from over. As lawsuits against Karen, her allies, and Greystone Contracting gained traction, the mood in the community shifted from outrage to cautious optimism. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only scratching the surface of a deeper conspiracy. The name of the lawyer who had facilitated many of the fraudulent transactions lingered in my mind. John Prescott, a high-profile attorney with a reputation for handling shady deals, was far too connected to be involved by coincidence. Determined to uncover the full extent of his involvement, I began piecing together a timeline of his activities related to the homeowner association. Late nights spent combing through public records and newspaper archives yielded surprising results. Prescott had ties to several other communities where similar patterns of corruption had been uncovered. In each case, homeowner associations had been used as vehicles for siphoning funds into shell companies and kickback schemes. It became clear that our neighborhood was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger systematic exploitation of homeowner association systems. I shared my findings with Ellen and the new homeowner association board. While they were initially hesitant to pursue an investigation beyond our community, the overwhelming evidence convinced them to authorize a deeper probe. Together, we enlisted the help of an investigative journalist, Sophia Carter, who specialized in exposing financial fraud. Sophia's presence brought a renewed sense of urgency and professionalism to our efforts. The turning point came when Sophia managed to secure an interview with a former employee of Greystone Contracting. The whistleblower, speaking under the condition of anonymity, revealed that Prescott had orchestrated the contracts with homeowner associations across the state, using his legal expertise to shield the scheme from scrutiny. "It's a well-oiled machine," the whistleblower explained. "Prescott handles the paperwork, Greystone does the dirty work, and the homeowner association boards are either complicit or too scared to push back." This new information added a national dimension to our fight. Sophia's article, published in a prominent newspaper, exposed the scheme in excruciating detail. The story went viral, drawing the attention of law enforcement and regulatory agencies. Federal investigators soon launched a probe into Prescott's operations, putting immense pressure on everyone involved. As the investigation intensified, the atmosphere in the neighborhood grew tense. Supporters of the old regime lashed out, accusing the new board of dragging the community into unnecessary legal battles. Threatening letters began arriving at my door, warning me to back off and leave well enough alone. One night, I awoke to the sound of breaking glass. Someone had thrown a brick through my living room window. Attached was a note scrawled in bold, jagged letters. "You don't know who you're messing with." The police took the threat seriously, but their resources were stretched thin. I installed additional security cameras and began carrying pepper spray, refusing to let fear deter me. Still, the incident left me shaken. I confided in Ellen, who insisted on staying over for a few nights to ensure I wasn't alone. Meanwhile, the lawsuits against Karen and Greystone progressed. Depositions revealed more damning evidence, including emails and recorded conversations that tied Prescott directly to the fraudulent activities. It was only a matter of time before the courts would deliver their verdicts. Then, in an unexpected twist, Karen reappeared. She contacted me through her lawyer, proposing a settlement. She's willing to provide testimony against Prescott in exchange for reduced penalties, the lawyer explained. The offer was tempting, but came with risks. Karen's testimony could be the nail in Prescott's coffin. but trusting her felt like making a deal with the devil. The board deliberated over the proposal, eventually agreeing to accept it under strict conditions. Karen's deposition was a spectacle. For the first time, she appeared genuinely contrite, detailing how Prescott had recruited her and others with promises of wealth and power. He made it sound so easy, she said, like no one would ever find out. Her cooperation proved invaluable. With her testimony, federal prosecutors were able to charge Prescott and his associates with multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The trial became a media sensation, shining a spotlight on the dark underbelly of homeowner association corruption nationwide. As the legal battles drew to a close, the neighborhood began to heal. Funds recovered from the lawsuits were used to restore community amenities and lower homeowner association dues. The new board worked tirelessly to rebuild trust, implementing safeguards to ensure transparency and fairness. Despite the victory, I felt a bittersweet sense of closure. The fight had consumed months of my life, exposing me to dangers and testing my resolve. But it had also united the community and set a precedent for holding those in power accountable. Standing on my driveway one evening, I looked at the newly restored gate and smiled. It wasn't just a gate. It was a symbol of everything we'd fought for. As neighbors passed by, some waved or stopped to chat, their gratitude evident in their smiles. "You did it," Ellen said, appearing beside me. "You took them down." "We did it," I replied, knowing I couldn't have done it alone. The battle against corruption had been a collective effort, proving that even the most entrenched systems of power could be challenged when people stood together. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The fight was over, but the lessons it taught us would resonate for a lifetime. Together, we had reclaimed not just our neighborhood, but also our dignity and our hope for the future.